Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 18. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. This is a weekly visual journalism roundtable podcast where a group of visual journalists gather to discuss news of the week related to our career field. I am a visual journalist. I've been doing it for about 16 years, and I'm currently living in Charleston, South Carolina.
And I'm your co-host, Zach D. Roberts. I'm a photojournalist who works in New York and Alaska. I've worked for BBC, The Guardian, but most recently I've been working on a documentary called The Best Democracy Money Can Buy.
I like it. I like it a lot. Hey, Zach, guess what?
What?
We got a sponsor this week.
Really?
No, not really.
Ah.
But listen, this is for all the listeners. I need you to do this for me. If you don't have a Dropbox account, I need you to get a Dropbox account. And when you get a Dropbox account, I need you to refer me in that Dropbox account when you sign up for it. Just put djmphoto@gmail.com or follow the link I'm going to put in the show notes, and that's a referral link. And see, what you do is you do that, and then I get more space on my end. Now you're thinking to yourself, well, why do I want to help you out? I don't know you. Well, here's what the thing is, right? I host all these episodes on my Dropbox account because Dropbox is an awesome way to host a podcast, in case you didn't know. So I'm running out of space on my Dropbox account, and I need more space. So you are actually supporting the show. So you sign up for Dropbox. I get 500 megabytes each time, up to 16 gigabytes. And there we go. So Dropbox, it's good. Does anybody use Dropbox, by the way?
Of course, always.
Yeah.
Okay, great. You're all dead to me because you can't send it for Dropbox. But if you don't have Dropbox, get it. Okay, so that's our quote-unquote sponsor this week. Yeah. But before we get into introducing our panelists, which I'm going to do here in just a minute, I also want to plug AroundTheLens.com because I've been doing a lot of work, putting a lot of stuff on there. Go to it. You know, you can go to it while you're watching this. I don't care. I'm okay with that. You're not going to offend me. Just go to it and check it out. We got a lot of good information on there. I've really fleshed out a lot of the aspects of the website. You can become a patron, and you have to go to patreon.com/AroundTheLens. We got an Instagram account, but there's nothing on it right now. We have a merchandise store, so you can buy things with the Around the Lens logo on it. So you can get this thing on stuff. So there's a lot of great things you can do. The website, again, like I said, has been really fleshed out. So by all means, go check that out. And at the end of the show, we're going to have a bonus topic, and that's going to be on Patreon. So if you go to Patreon and give us like $1 or something, you get the bonus content. And if you don't want to give us $1, I'll eventually throw the bonus content on YouTube, but not for a little bit. So that's your thing. No, it's okay. You'll get it eventually. But if you want it right now.
No, we're gonna throw it in the garbage. You don't pay for it.
It'll be deleted, and we'll burn the hard drive, and you'll never see it again.
Magnets over everything.
All right. So enough of the plugs. Let's get on with the show by introducing my guests this week. I got two great guests. We got Tess Freeman and Dave Bergman. Why don't you two go ahead and introduce yourselves? Tess?
Okay, my name is Tess Freeman. I am currently a multimedia journalist at the Bulletin in Bend, Oregon. I've been working for 3 years, pretty new in this field. My past experience was a staff photographer at the Coeur d'Alene Press, and before that did internships at the Victoria Advocate in South Texas and the Register Guard in Eugene, Oregon. I graduated from the University of Oregon and worked at the Oregon Daily Emerald and got to photograph the Oregon Ducks in some of their prime years. So yeah, I'm pretty new to this field, but really excited and love it and excited to be here.
What are the Oregon Ducks?
The football team for the University of Oregon. They were in the national championship last year.
I don't know. I know Syracuse is in the Final Four of basketball, but that's about all I know about sports. That's only because Syracuse is my alma mater. Go Orange. Tess, so I know you through Ethan Rocky, right? Mm-hmm. Did you go to school with Ethan?
No, I worked with Ethan on a project during the Portland workshop, and we were there in its first year, and it was an amazing opportunity because we had really great coaches from around the Northwest come and spend a weekend coaching with us. And we were fortunate to have Carrie Wagner kind of guide us on our project, and ended up turning out a pretty powerful piece called Four Letters that went on to win an award in the Audience Awards, which I think Ethan talked about when he was here.
Yep, yep. Well, great to have you on, and glad that previous show panelists could obviously recommend another great panelist. So if you're listening and know somebody who wants to be on the show, by all means, send them my way. I'd be happy to talk to them. David?
Hey, so yeah, really happy to be here. First of all, I have to point out that this lower third right here, that is not an icon. That's actually a portrait of me. That is what I look like. Yeah. So,
it looks like that on the screen.
At least you've got that.
I actually can't. When you photograph me, that's exactly what I look like. So, anyway, yes, my name is David Bergman. I am kind of the opposite of Tess. I'm on the other side of the United States. I'm in New York City. I live in Manhattan. I grew up in Miami, Florida, and I worked at the Miami Herald down there. So I was a newspaper photojournalist for 10 years or so, and then back in the 90s before you were born, Tess. And yeah, I've lived in New York for 15 years now. I'm a freelance music. I consider myself mostly a music and sports photographer. So I've done all the sports stuff, Sports Illustrated, the World Series, Olympics, and Super Bowls, and all that kind of stuff. And then the music stuff is really my passion. I was a musician before I got into photography. And I've since been able to combine those two loves and actually have gone on tours with big rock bands, and I do a lot of portraits with bands, and pretty much the last 5-6 years I'm kind of most well known. I've had a few things over the years that I'm kind of known for, but the most recent thing was I was on tour with Bon Jovi. I'm Bon Jovi's tour photographer, so I got to travel the world with them on a private jet going from country to country around the world. So that was a pretty awesome gig. And yeah, that's kind of my bio in 30 seconds or less.
Nice. What's Bon Jovi like in real life?
You know what? He's actually a really great guy. He at this point in their life, that organization runs like the White House. I mean, the car routes are planned ahead of time, for dinner, and there's a whole motorcade that travels, and call times at 5:30 to go to the airport. At 5 o'clock, I'm in the lobby, with my bags in the car ready to go, because as soon as John walks out of the elevator, we go, and it's very professionally run, and everybody wants like sex, drugs, and rock and roll stories, and honestly, backstage it's really kind of boring for the most part. Those guys are all married with kids, they're all in their 50s, and I'm sure they lived through that in the 80s, and I missed that part, unfortunately, but these days it's a multi-million-dollar corporation that just happens to be a rock show. But John personally is very professional. He's philanthropic. He's generous, and his friends, his peers are, he's friends with the president and congressmen and NFL owners and those kinds of people. So, he's not out late partying all night. He goes to bed early. He has a couple glasses of white wine and goes to bed, and that's pretty much it. And then the rest of us get to party after that.
Nice. I just want to say hello to our one live viewer. Hey, live viewer.
Hey, live viewer.
I saw your book here. You have Bon Jovi. It's called Work, right? You created this book. It's your imagery in here. Is that something? Because you said, like, okay, Bon Jovi is like a corporation now. But you are his tour photographer. How does that work? Do you own the rights to your own pictures, or does he own the rights to your pictures, or do you have to ask him permission, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not allowed to talk too much about my specific contract, but I can just say that. Yeah, no, I can just say that. Everybody's pretty happy. I mean, they've taken good care of me over the years. I will say that I've never signed away copyright to my work.
Good.
So, and that's important to me. Believe me, they have plenty of rights, and they have rights to do, what they need to do with the images, and yeah, at the end of the day, I wouldn't use any of the pictures without asking them anyway, because there's no reason to. Why would I do that? Sure, maybe, I don't see any reason why I would do that. I'd much rather work with them and have them, do the book together with them instead of doing one on my own that nobody's going to care about. So, John actually promoted this book. He talks about it, and we did it together. He approved every picture that's in the book, and he was involved in the decision-making process, and that's really. I've always said I've never I don't want to photograph people who don't want me there. I'm not a paparazzi. I don't do any of that stuff. If I work with a celebrity, it's because they want me there and they hopefully like my work, and we're collaborating together to make something better.
That's great. Well, it sounds like a mutually beneficial relationship, I think.
Absolutely.
So that's great. All right. Well, let's get on with the show. We got a lot of great stuff to talk about this week. Our first story of the week actually has to go, we had the Brussels bombing, I think last week, and, tragedy really killed dozens of people. But, out of all these tragedies, there's always imagery that comes out of it. You can't really have a major terrorist act in a populated area, whether it be a European nation, first world country, or maybe less first world places like Pakistan. Everyone has some sort of camera shooting capability, but it just so happened that during the Brussels bombing, or right after the Brussels bombing, there were a lot of photographers on the scene, and one in particular shot a photograph of a woman who was injured after the bombing, and she was sort of taking refuge on a chair, and the photograph got a lot of exposure, and it was of a Jet Airways stewardess, Nidhi Chepekra. I probably messed that up. But the photographer took this picture because obviously they were doing their job and they were trying to document, the aftermath of a horrible terrorist act. But of course, some people take umbrage with this photograph. I mean, it's not the most flattering image, of course. She's got her belly half exposed. She's got her bra out. She's got blood on her face, ashes all over her face. So, I mean, obviously, it's not a flattering photograph. But it's photographs like these that help tell the story, and I think it points to what we are and what we do as photojournalists. But in the article that we have in the show notes here, the author, like I said, takes on Sandip Roy. He takes some umbrage with the content, saying that basically, are we going too far? Are we using this? Is this exploitation? So what do you all think of this?
I mean, I feel pretty strongly about it because, I was a newspaper photographer for many years, and there's so many ways to come at this. We'll get to the part about the publications and sort of the lack of staff, on these publications anymore. And I mean, at the Miami Herald when I was there was a huge staff of people, and the photographers just made the images, right? You just document it because that's what we're trained to do. That's what we're supposed to do, and you document everything, and then they have meetings, editorial meetings, and they talk very seriously for long periods of time, and they debate back and forth for hours what pictures to run and why to run them. We used to have I think they called it the Cheerios test. Would people seeing a picture on the front page in the morning when they're eating their breakfast cereal, would it make them throw up their cereal? And generally you didn't want to do that, but you also had to show the story. So that's kind of part of the situation here, is that with the rise of social media and how these pictures can get out there so easily, and anybody can just Instagram a photo and tweet it out, there's that filter that's sort of gone now. That's only part of the story, and I'm sorry to take over for a minute here, but I want to tell a quick story. When I worked at the paper, and I was never really a hard news guy. I was the sports guy, and I did kind of the fun stuff, and I was one of the younger kids on staff there, but I was the first fully digital guy in the Miami office at the Miami Herald. And so therefore there were a couple of years there where I was the guy they sent to a lot of the spot news. And the Miami Herald back then sent people to South America and Central America, and we covered news all around the Americas because we were the paper to do that. So I covered Hurricane Mitch in Nicaragua. And the hurricane had just happened. Nobody really knew how bad it was. It was a Central American hurricane, and you kind of see video of wind, and that's about it. Well, myself and a reporter went in, and we were there the next day, and the first place we went was a village where there had been a mudslide, because basically, everybody lives right on the side of a mountain, and they told us stories of a 20-foot wall of mud coming down the side of the mountain and just burying the whole village, right? And one thing I didn't know, and most people probably don't know this, is when you're buried alive in mud, first of all, you suffocate to death, of course, and then apparently bodies in that mud, it's still kind of wet, they rise to the surface, and then the mud hardens. So when we showed up, basically the landscape is littered with dead bodies. It was horrible. I mean, it was something that I never thought I'd see growing up. Not something I particularly was passionate to document, but it was my job, and myself and the reporter were pretty much the first ones in. So we start talking to a woman who lost everybody the day before. She lost her kids, her parents, all of her relatives had died the day before. Of course, she's upset. She's crying. The reporter's talking to her in Spanish. I have to make pictures of this woman, and I know I have to, but I feel horrible. I feel like I'm exploiting her. I feel like obviously it's not a flattering photo of her. She's, I backed up and shot it sort of with a 70-200. I didn't want to get right in her face, but I had to make the photos. So I did that. I sent them in on the sat phone, and then the next day I called in the office, and they said, oh, the picture of that woman, that mother, ran above the fold on the front page. Great job, And I was like, okay, now I'm having room service like in my hotel, and I feel guilty. I feel horrible. Like I'm getting paid. To do this, and this woman has nothing. Well, then they said, at the grocery store, back when they sold newspapers at grocery stores, people were lined up, and by the time they got to the register, they were asking the cashier how they could give money to help that woman. And that day taught me a lesson. I got it then. That's not the kind of work I enjoy doing, but I understand the importance of that, and coming back to Brussels, that photo, whether you think it's an amazing photo or not, is a different discussion, but that photo got a lot of eyeballs, and you could argue that with 24-hour news shows and all that, we see everything already, but that photo definitely brought a lot of viewers to kind of hit home for them, and it's unfortunate maybe that for that woman, but her story means so much more in telling the story, and hopefully in the long run helping the situation more than it would have if the photographer had just buttoned her shirt up or whatever to for her dignity.
Yeah, I think the article points out the girl who was running naked away from the
napalm girl,
explosion.
Of course. Yeah.
And I think it's always something you have to think about maybe on the back end, but you obviously shouldn't think about it during it because you don't want to prevent yourself from shooting that.
Of course. And I wonder today, if the internet would explode like, oh, a naked girl, and then, and there's a picture of a naked young girl, how horrible, and I mean that picture changed the course of the war,
I can't imagine a single paper running that photo now, though. I don't know. I certainly can't. I mean, I'm sure maybe it would be in part of a slideshow or something like that, but which is kind of sad to say it that way. But I'm sorry.
With a warning.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, which is good because you view things in the newspaper very differently than you do kind of them on the internet. So I'm relatively okay with most of the warnings and stuff like that they kind of put on, but I'm not quite sure. I mean, the only time I can ever think of that I remember seeing nudity attached to a story, and whatever the story is with violence, was the Beslan massacre. As I distinctly remember a cover of Newsweek, there's a photo of a woman drenched in blood, and her shirt was open, and her bra was like slightly off, and that was the only time I can ever remember, at least in a place like Newsweek, in the kind of since the internet at least, a photo of nudity in news. And
I promise you, though, that the Newsweek editorial board or whoever was in charge of that probably had many hours of discussion over this.
And it's by far the most powerful photo that I ever saw from that scene, which had quite a few excellent photographers there because it took a couple days to pan out. So, but I mean, for this photo, I'm actually really surprised because I remember seeing that. I don't remember having an immediate, oh, this is going to cause a problem. There's a lot of photos, like I feel bad I forget the name of the photographer and the boy's name, the Syrian boy on the beach. I thought that was going to cause like a massive ethical discussion. And I don't recall an ethical discussion happening around that, like the way that, especially like Kevin Carter's photo of the vulture and the boy did. But it's interesting how kind of the internet outrage machine happens. Like I've seen a couple of articles about this one now, and it doesn't seem to happen as consistently as you think it would.
It's interestingly polarized, because you see either the outrage by one group of people, that we're talking about, but then at the same time, I think the general public is kind of desensitized. It's like, because we see so much imagery now, and we see these things on 24/7, news programs all the time, that I don't think it has the same impact that it did years ago when, it was Life magazine and you just picked it up once a week or once a month and that was it.
It's funny how we are completely okay with seeing death and a dead kid on a beach, but you show, a partially exposed woman, or if you show a nipple, you're honest, that's nope, don't do that.
I was just going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was just going to say, I have a young daughter, I have a, almost teenage daughter, and, you can turn on primetime TV and see somebody getting murdered and running down the street with a gun and blowing people away, and blood and guts and dead bodies everywhere on primetime television. But like you said, Janet Jackson's nipple pops out for a third of a second, and they're boycotting the networks. That makes, as a parent, that makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah. But also, also this photo was widely shared on Facebook, on Twitter, on all the social media sites, so so many photos like this from different scenes, whether it be, I have a lot of friends that discuss quite a bit, and I'll put discuss nicely, about Israel-Palestine, and so the amount of photos that are shared on both sides of victims on that story that I can't believe don't immediately get hit with the kind of ban, the way that a photo of a mother breastfeeding, it seems to, likes to create outrage.
I think with these types of photos, it's easy, and especially with the amount of how fast photos get pushed out there, it's easy to blame the photographer and say, oh, they shouldn't have taken this photo, they should have covered her up. But I think The Guardian made this point that really the photographer is there documenting what happened. Really, who made this happen is the terrorists, and I think that's really overlooked.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And also, on that same point is like I referenced earlier, it's really up to, you need those filters, and you need those people to make those decisions. The photographer just has documented. One other quick story. I remember years ago, a photographer friend of mine was working for, I won't say the name of the organization, but there was it was an entertainment organization, and there was an accident. There was a horrible accident, and somebody was killed during the course of their job. And this photographer had made photos of this happening. This was during a rehearsal for a thing, and there were photos of this person getting killed. Now, obviously, the publicity people immediately wanted to destroy the film. This was film, it's a slide film. They wanted to destroy it. And he said, look, just take the film. You don't even have to process it. Just take it, put it away. Put it somewhere safe. Don't destroy it. In 20 years, 30 years, you never know what you're going to want to do with it. The family might want it. You never know what you just it. If you don't shoot it or if you destroy it, then you never have the option. Even a small, thing like in my Bon Jovi book that you referenced. I was in the operating room with John Bon Jovi when he had surgery on his knee. Now, this is not a, like as important a story as the things we're talking about, but, it's easy to say, oh, I don't want pictures of this, but luckily John in particular is one of those people where he gets it, and it took very little for me to talk him into saying, just let me be there, let me shoot it. He was telling the nurses, they're going to do something with this after I'm dead, but he understands, just document it, we can decide later. Now, then this book came out, and we had a long discussion about it and decided that it was important to show this vulnerable side of him and to inspire people, who may go through similar things. So you just don't know. It's absolutely not the photographer's fault. They need to document it. That's what they're there for.
I'm inspired right now to get knee surgery, and I don't even need it. That's right there.
Only if you're saying "Living on a Prayer" while you're having it done.
Living on a prayer. You can do that then, okay?
Please don't go there.
I'll have a Bruce Springsteen level amount of respect for him. Sorry.
There you go.
But I think I probably told this story before. Whenever we're talking about like protests and violence. Is that there was a scene during the Chicago NATO protests during Occupy Wall Street and the whole thing, and I witnessed a girl, a female protester, get hit by a police van. Immediately, all of the medics from Occupy Wall Street converged around her, formed a protective circle around here, stopped photographers from photographing her, to the point that they actually got violent with us and started pushing us away
Wow.
and trying to pull at our cameras. The first fight in my entire life happened that when my buddy CS, who's been a guest on the show, somebody tried to yank away his cameras, and I had to jump on the back of him. It's like literally, I've actually done boxing, I've done everything. I've never gotten into a fight, so like literally just had to jump around him. But not what I loved, because it's a really sad story, but what I found ironic about that story was that 3 months later, not even 3 months later, I think a month later, after she had recovered and gone to the hospital, she was looking at, justifiably, because I witnessed it happen in the police car, purposely tried to hit her, is that she was looking for photographs from the night that happened. And unfortunately, I don't believe there were any. I think there were probably a couple cell phone pics, but it was like at 9 o'clock at night under street lamps, so none of it happened. But, you know, and if she had had photographs that were published or whatever from a professional photojournalist, that has a lot of weight to it. It has, you know, I wouldn't say that it has like legal weight to it, but I certainly, if they brought me into court or whatever and they asked me to talk about it, I would certainly say, here's what I witnessed, here's my photographic evidence, here's my record as a photographer that has worked for papers for, you know, and everybody under the sun for more than a decade. And here's what that means. And that's actually not the only case that's happened with. There's been a handful other ones that, especially during Occupy Wall Street, where police did something, I had photographs of it, and luckily they were either able to use the photographs to get off, or sometimes vice versa, unfortunately, which is why sometimes they have a problem with it. But that's one of the reasons, if nothing else, not even newsworthy, but it's to have somebody there with that's more than credible as a witness at these things. You know?
I wonder if, because of the world we live in now, where everybody's a photographer, I mean, that's good on a lot of levels, but it's also, it kind of has thinned out the gene pool a little bit, and you know, how do they know who to believe and who to trust? And you know, you're a respected photojournalist, but they may not know that just just because you have a nice camera doesn't mean anything, right? No,
I know, and it's interesting because later, was it later? I forget the timeline. I think it was later during Occupy Wall Street. I was actually arrested because I got mixed up with a bunch of protesters in a kettle. The kettle is the orange netting they bring around people, and then they arrest everybody inside of it. And I actually had to prove in open court, the most ridiculous thing of my life, I had to prove that I was a working photojournalist.
What, do you show clips?
No, I literally had to print out clips. I'm not kidding, which was super awkward because at that time period, I had been working a lot covering Occupy Wall Street, because the only people that were interested in it for a website called Suicide Girls, which, if you know Suicide Girls,
no, I've never heard of it.
It's
I don't know anything about it.
No web history. But back then they had, it's basically a modern Playboy to an extent, and Playboy is at least used to be a respected outfit for interviews and journalists and stuff like that. They kind of tried to do the same thing. Exactly.
I only read it for the articles.
Exactly.
That's all you can do now.
Exactly.
That's all they have now.
But the DA, I had to show a bunch of clips. Luckily, I had other clips from other places as well, just not to show those. But they had the DA in open court say Zachary Roberts is a working photographer in the city of New York, and we're dropping charges. That took 6 months, mind you, but
wow.
But yeah, it's that gave me a lot of cred in the movement, luckily, from then on. But unfortunately, it kind of dissolved after that. But
let me ask any of you this: have there ever been an instance where you paused before taking a photograph, or there's a photograph that you didn't publish because maybe you thought it might offend somebody, or was there ever any time when it was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't photograph that, or did you ever get perhaps lambasted by someone else from the outside, being like, why are you taking a picture of that? Don't take a picture of that. Has that ever happened to you?
I mean, you say didn't publish, but I don't consider myself a publisher. Although we're all sort of a publisher now with social media. So I mean, I handle my own social media differently than I do when I'm working for an organization, right? If I'm working for somebody, I will not hesitate to shoot anything. You shoot everything, and even if I'm just doing something on my own, you shoot it. You always shoot it. I mean, I can't think of a particular example, but I'm sure I've been in protests and things like that where people say, don't photograph her. I've had to photograph even on a much more superficial level. High school kids losing the state championship game, and they're crying. College kids, I've seen this, and they're crying on the sideline, and it's part of the story, and you shoot pictures of it, and even the athletic director or somebody gets in your face, don't take pictures of them, and it's like, don't tell me not to shoot. Tell your kids to get their heads up, like tell your kids to get it together. Don't yell at me for documenting what's happening here, So I've never had any problem shooting it, but then again, publishing it. Like I said, then you have to sort of have that discussion if it's just your own social media feed, or if it's an organization, it's up to them to sort of decide what's the story, and if it's just sensationalist to get eyeballs, or if there's really a story to tell there.
Tess, Zach, ever had pause before taking a photograph or been lambasted for taking a photograph?
I would say when I was in Texas, second internship, and the spot news down there is just insane, and they cover everything from smaller accidents to the side of the road to fatalities, and if something comes over the scanner, you go and check it out. And so I'd say that's where I really learned how to approach spot news, and I would echo what David said. I always shot what I saw, and started getting in this kind of dilemma where the editors weren't running a lot of what I was producing because of blood or fatalities, or you could see something in that scene that would upset people. And
Right.
So I had this dilemma about, okay, well, why am I shooting this? Why am I going to these accidents if you're not running these photos? And so I kind of learned how to approach situations from that publisher side, but still always took the photos that...
Yeah, I mean, you never know, maybe 20 years later, that accident that was nothing at the time might have relevance. Maybe it was a child of somebody important. You never know at the time.
Yeah.
I think there was a great photograph of them hauling Bernie Sanders away from something,
yeah.
right? There was some black and white
Yeah.
photograph of him as a college student or something like that, and now it's like, well, now that's relevant.
I mean, there's the
Yeah.
famous, Dirk Halstead photo of Bill Clinton hugging Monica Lewinsky in the presidential line there, and when he tells the story, it's great because this was slide film back in the day, right? And the whole story came out with her, and he kind of had this I feel like I've seen her before, and he actually had his somebody had to go through. I think he hired people to go through his archives and go through every slide because he kept everything. And at the time, it was the early digital days. And those of us who were shooting digital early, and I like to think I didn't do this, but I'm sure I did a few times, you had to delete stuff. You just had to because the cards weren't very big, the files were unmanageable, the images weren't great quality anyway, and a lot of the daily wire service guys at that time who were shooting the same things that Dirk were deleting their images. And they just, and it looked like a nothing picture. Who cares? It's just him walking down the line hugging people. Dirk had it on slide film, and that was the cover of Time magazine, and it was the first picture of the two of them together.
It's really sad to think about that. I'm a digital hoarder. If I could show you my desk, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hard drives, each one at least 2 gigs. I also shoot video, so it's
We're gonna have you on Hoarders here.
But oh my God, I mean, and almost all of them are connected on the side of my computer here.
I'm sitting in front of a blank white wall because I don't want you to see my desk because it's filled with hard drives as well.
But I did this talk during Occupy. Cecily McMillan, she was a girl that was kind of roughed up by the cops, and she had a big trial that went on in New York. Me with a bunch of other freelancers, we all photographed the scene. I was one of the only non-attached wire service people, so my photos were owned by no one except for me. And luckily, I kept every single photo from that evening. And I had, unbeknownst to me later on, I go, she looks really familiar. Wait a minute. Once I heard the trial thing, and I actually was able to follow her entire evening. And I did a story for what is now Reading the Pictures, where we follow her from the point that she is knocked to the ground by a police officer after supposedly he claims hit her in the face. She denies that. And then brought over to the cage where people were being arrested, and then brought into the thing, and follow her entire evening through the entire thing, which unfortunately proves that her story was untrue. It also proves that the police officer's story was untrue as well. And so we combined that with a bunch of other photojournalists who work with us, Julie Reinhardt, who's been on the show, and basically laid out her entire evening, which proved a completely different case. And activists hated it. As far as I know, the police hated it because they didn't use it in evidence, and the protesters did. But to me, it was one of those, like, it's really scary when I start to think that so many photographers are doing this. Most of the photographers I know delete kind of they keep their kind of things in Lightroom, the certain ones, and then delete the rest because obviously hard drives. Luckily, hard drives are so much cheaper now. But I mean, the D5 shoots probably like a 60 meg raw file now. I mean, so I mean, like the game continually keeps going up, and that's one thing that now that everyone's a wire photographer that is usually independent. It's all up to us as photographers to keep this, which is another burden financially. And also, I mean, there's not a lot of staff photographers anymore, so you don't have the databases and they can't afford it. It's not like the Chicago archives where, like they did with the Bernie photo, they can go through some ridiculous thing, or like the stacks that New York Times has a fantastic, I forget whether it's a Tumblr page or an Instagram page where they go through and just find random photos and scan it. We're not going to be able to do that. I mean, for history in the future, and yeah.
Well, in the future, I think everything will be, all your photographs will be scanned. So all you gotta do is put like the face of whoever you're looking for, and
oh my God, Lightroom has already started doing that now. It terrifies me. I enter a thing and it goes, 58 photos matched, and I'm like, I don't even know this person.
It's creepy. It's creepy. We talk Big Brother. Facebook is Big Brother because
oh my God, yeah.
I took a picture on my iPhone of a friend of mine. And within 2 minutes, I got a notification from Facebook. Now, I didn't take this picture in Facebook. This is just on my iPhone. And I got a notification saying, "Do you want to send Joel that picture?" And I was like,
oh, wow.
It's all linked.
I kind of freaked out a little bit. But anyway, I said, "No, get out of my phone."
When I saw that happen on my phone the first time, I was like, "Oh, wow."
Yeah.
Everything's tied together.
It's all connected. Yeah. I mean, like you said, it is there are some advantages of it. Obviously, being able to find old photos, but it's going to be up to people like us to kind of manage those archives and to build that into our pricing. And when I do a job now, I have to tell them I'm going to keep these images for this long, and you'll have access to them, and I charge for that if I can, because that's an important part. That's what separates a professional photographer from somebody who just snaps pictures, is archiving and keywording and captioning and all those things that we all hate to do, but you have to do it because guess what? 20 years from now, we're going to be looking for that picture. I did a portrait of every young high school baseball player in Miami when I was just starting to freelance at the Miami Herald, and I own that stuff. And guess what? I have a portrait of Alex Rodriguez in high school, and didn't know that till years later, and I sort of stumbled across it. But it had his name on it, and it has the year and the school and all that stuff. Of course, it's typed on a typewriter and stuck to an envelope, but that was in '93, I believe it was. So.
Wow.
But now, it's a bit easier now. We just have to do it, and it's up to us to do it. We're the people to do it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. A little bit lighter, I guess, compared to a terrorist attack. Does a monkey have rights? Specifically, does a monkey have rights to a photograph it took of itself? So this monkey, or I'm sorry, well, they say monkey. Okay, so this monkey named Marudo in Indonesia took a selfie using this photographer Dave John Slater's camera in September of last year. And so, this photograph gets all kind of attention online, goes viral, I guess, and PETA's like, we need to get in on this. So they sue the photographer, saying that the monkey has rights to the imagery and that the money made off the image should go to, obviously saving the wildlife and saving the forest and whatnot. And obviously, the judge dismissed the case. But does anybody have any thoughts on this in terms of, do animals have rights to the imagery they shoot? I could probably put a camera on my cat. Does the cat own the rights to the imagery?
we've been called monkeys with cameras before, but this is a bit
I
silly.
think we're called professional button clickers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but I mean, this is kind of ridiculous, right? I mean, no, a monkey can't own copyright. And look, I know what PETA is trying to do, and they generate some publicity, and I'm in favor of some of the things they do. I don't like some of their techniques, but if the photographer wants to go ahead and donate money to the organization, that'd be great. But no, absolutely not necessary. And PETA also obviously doesn't realize how little pictures make now, because that picture was online everywhere.
It's gone, yeah.
That picture's not generating. How much money is that picture?
Seconds.
Yeah, how much money is that picture generating? So, I mean, I think it's kind of a publicity stunt, and it's a funny one, and it's kind of interesting to talk about. But no, I think every court has said that copyright and those kinds of rights are pretty much for humans only.
Tess, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I think the reason that image got so much attention is because the monkey took it. But like, if
Wasn't a
I
bad
was
picture.
a photographer, yeah. But if I was like, oh, I took this picture of this monkey, then I wouldn't probably post it anywhere, and it wouldn't get the attention that. So I just think it's another internet craze that takes off.
I mean, it's kind of genius, by PETA, right? I mean, it got a lot of attention, and I'm sure it has raised some money, and it's great. But I mean, from a serious standpoint, it's kind of silly.
I mean, it's PETA's unfortunately lame attempt at trying to. They've been for years trying to basically make animals have greater rights in general. And they found this as an example. I still haven't read a story that sees how PETA was able to claim that they would be able to represent the monkey, which is actually, that's kind of the part of that interests me, is that how PETA, who doesn't have any ownership or any even claim over like the land that the monkey lived on, or any in way, shape, and form, which is obviously what they're trying to that basically monkeys have self-ownership, just like humans do, and that all animals have those rights, which if the judge stupidly agreed, then it would literally change the rule of law in the United States, and anyone who claimed to own a dog would probably be potentially thrown in jail. So it's one of those, like, thank Lord on so many levels that the judge did not just jokingly agree with it, that maybe there's a potential for a case here. But I mean, it is interesting because there's been other arguments where sports figures grab a camera and take a photo of them or whatever, who owns the rights for it. And also, I mean, I've heard a lot of, David, you've photographed a lot of celebs. Have you ever had a celeb try to argue that they have equal rights to the photo since it's a photo of them? I mean, I know usually you're in a contract. I mean, I've had that occasionally where I'm like...
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it happens all the time. Yeah, I mean, that's a little different. I mean, copyright law is pretty clear. I mean, I'm no lawyer, but from what I understand, it's pretty clear that if I hand you the camera and you push the button, you own the copyright to that image. So unless we have an agreement, a contractual agreement otherwise. So yeah, in that situation where a sports figure, if you hand them the camera and they take the picture, they own the copyright. Now, in most cases, they don't care. They're making a heck of a lot more money than we are anyway. So, it's not that big a deal to them. But certainly it is an issue with rights of privacy and commercial rights and those kinds of things. When I photograph somebody, I mean, yeah, you can't. Even though I may own copyright to an image, by law, I can license it editorially, but I can't license it commercially without a proper release from that person, whether it's a celebrity or otherwise. So and I take that very seriously also. I mean, I don't break that. You know, when I work with an artist, we have a contract that allows me to use those pictures certain ways. A lot sometimes we're sharing in the revenue, and there are, you know, those things are all worked out ahead of time. But if I see somebody walking down the street and I take a picture of them, you know, I can go ahead and license that to a newspaper, to, you know, as for a news story, anything that's would be considered editorial. But I can't go ahead and sell an ad, a Gatorade ad of that person from that photo without that person, you know, signing away that right.
Well, you know, you mentioned that, and I'm curious, what are your thoughts on, if you remember this story, it came out a little while ago, the, I think it was Muslim woman who was inside of a Starbucks drinking coffee, and her image was used by, I believe, the New York Times or some publication to talk about, I guess, Muslim women or something like that. Do you remember that story? Do you have any recall of that?
I don't remember that story. I mean, this sounds similar to the Brussels thing we're talking about, right? Where it's
well, no, it was basically like she was mad at that they were taking an image that was used, obviously without her permission. You know, just general news photograph of somebody sitting in a coffee.
She had an interesting. Because it's.
And that's private property, which is sort of different than being in public as well.
Well, it's. I think it had a lot to do with the fact that the photo was not. It's one of those illustrated photos. The way the photo was used, it was a Muslim woman in a Starbucks so it was, you know, the kind of way you use a photo, be like, oh well, this photo is making a statement on
a generalization
on Muslim women in, you know, Western society, sort of thing. So it was a. I don't know if she was making this legal argument or if there even was, but to me it actually had. It was an interesting conversation, at least, to be had, where sometimes I'll do it in stories that I write. I'll use a photo that is illustrative of a person in a scene, as opposed to, it's not journalistic. Like, it's not, this story is not about this woman. And I believe that she also did not like the fact that herself was being used as the example.
Well, that's why I said it was like
Brussels.
That's why I said it was like Brussels, in that you know, and I don't know if we've heard from the woman in that photo in Brussels, so maybe this isn't the same. But you know, that's somebody not liking the fact that they were in a photo that was used.
Yeah.
You know, that's an interesting gray area there. Is that considered editorial, where it's more of an illustrative photo, but it's in a newspaper to illustrate a story? I'm not sure about the legal ramifications there, but in general, in public, you know, if you're in public, your image can be used. I mean, so I did a picture at Obama's first inauguration. It was a Gigapan image, and it was this super high-res photo, and you could zoom in on individual faces in the crowd, and there were 2 million people there, and you can probably see about 1 million of the faces, right, clearly. And a lot of the questions I got when I was interviewed about it was, what about rights of privacy? And, you know, should people be concerned about this? And my answer was always, this is one of the most public events of my generation, right? This was on every network TV. This was covered from every possible angle. Just because my pictures were a little tighter, you know, zoomed in a little more than anybody else, shouldn't matter. Any CNN camera could have caught you. If you're there, you know, if you're at a sporting event with somebody you're not supposed to be there with, you know, with your girlfriend instead of your wife, you know, that's, you know, it's the Ferris Bueller thing, right? You're going to wind up on television catching a foul ball, and, you know, you can't blame the network for that, right? So I'm just documenting the event, and then you know, it's in a very public place. So that's, the Starbucks thing is interesting to me just because on private property it's a little bit different. You know, I wonder if the Starbucks had approved the photographer to be in the store. Was it through the window from the outside? I don't really know all the details of that story.
I mean, I don't know how it was shot. I mean, Starbucks isn't, you know, referenced. I don't even know if you can see the Starbucks logo.
It's. I found the photo. I put the link in the Google chat, and we'll put it in the store link. So I believe it's a Washington Post story. At least the photo that I found use of it. It's a AP photo by Mark Lenehan. I might be pronouncing him. It's to me it looks clearly inside the Starbucks, and the only reason I mention Starbucks is that, well, it's the red cup, and there's a Starbucks logo in the background, slightly out of focus, but
because yeah, you know, a corporation like that, you know, generally they don't allow, you know, even editorial, real journalism photographers in to do that kind of stuff. I know at the paper every year we always on Christmas Day, we always had to go shoot, at the toy stores, or even the day before at the toy stores. And I remember Toys R Us would never, ever, ever let us do it. And it's like, this is free advertising. I don't understand why we're not doing a bad story. We want kids in the aisles, trying out the bicycles, right?
Yeah.
But that was just their corporate policy, and they all knew it, and you just could never go there. So we found some small toy store to do it at. But so that may have been an issue as well.
Well, I mean, from I believe what I read about the story is he wasn't going there to shoot this. It was just sort of something he found on the way from another shoot and just happened to snap it. But it's funny you mentioned the Toy Story thing, because I remember going out after, like, on Black Friday, trying to get stories about people going to Black Friday and the lines.
Shopping malls are the worst. They won't let you in there with a camera. They'll kick you out of there so fast.
Oh yeah, they don't like that at all. Yeah. But I mean, I was able to get I believe it was a Circuit City, which still existed at the time, and I think a Target or something let me shoot inside their stores. So I got a few shots of people with, carts full of useless junk that was priced extremely cheaply. So
I'm sure Target loves that way you describe that.
Brought to you by Target. And our new sponsor is Circuit City.
Right, Circuit City.
One by one, we will check through these places that will not be able to sponsor us.
All right, so our next topic deals all about visual journalism and really the core. And I think you touched on it earlier, David. When we go out, it's obviously we're not going out there and we're just snapping pictures and having a good time. Obviously, that's the fun of our job. That's why we like to do it. But the work part of our jobs comes to actually talking to people, getting their names, recording information, because when we get back, we have to put that information attached to the picture if we want to, obviously sell it to a news organization or something like that. So how do you capture information when you're out shooting? What's the best way that you found to get names, information? We talked a little bit about this last week, so I thought I'd make it a whole topic this week. So go ahead. I know, Zach, you mentioned, obviously during protests, you're not getting, the person who's getting pepper sprayed right at that moment. They're like, oh, what's your name?
Yeah.
What's your... Oh, my eyes! How do you spell that? M-Y...
But you should later. You absolutely should later. There's no reason not to do that. I mean, I think it's hugely important. I'm sorry, I know I hijacked you here, but when I first started, I was a relatively shy kid. I was raised in sort of a middle class neighborhood, kind of sheltered, and had a angst-free upbringing. And then all of a sudden, I'm in Miami covering Spot News and covering riots and protests and Elian Gonzalez and that kind of stuff. And I learned very quickly that they wouldn't publish a photo without a name. They just wouldn't, because it gives it credibility. It gives it, accountability. And, a reporter can't write it, very few circumstances can they have anonymous sources, I mean, obviously high-level White House, blah, blah, blah. But other than that, a man on the street, they're not going to write, oh, somebody told me that so-and-so, they would never do that. And photojournalists should be held to that same standard. So I had to photograph somebody in the street protesting, and then even somebody getting pepper sprayed. If obviously if it's not appropriate right at that moment because they're in some kind of pain, you've got to either go to the cops and get their information, or you've got to somehow find out who that person is, and because otherwise it undermines all of our credibility without that accountability.
And I think that's what sets photojournalists apart from just your everyday photographer on the street, is that they go the extra mile to make sure they're credible.
Yeah, I mean, this rise of citizen journalism, again, there are certainly going to be events where it's valuable and something happens spur of the moment and there are pictures that exist, but for the majority of the sort of news gathering and storytelling, you need somebody who's a trained journalist and takes it seriously and isn't just out there snapping photos.
In general, I very rarely get names, and I mean, I honestly, in New York now, I very rarely actually even see photographers get them. I mean, like maybe if you're on assignment for the Times or something like that, I'll see it. But most of the wire photographers, very rarely do I see it. I started doing. I mean, I shoot for a couple different wires, and I've never once had even someone ask for it. I mean, certainly for The Voice, it's never been an issue. I mean, occasionally I get names if it's something very specific to the conversation, or if I talk to the person, obviously I get a name. The only way I don't even go, I used to carry around a notepad, but now everything if I get a name or have anything, it goes into my camera as a video clip, which is always useful because then it's right next to thing, and also the name is attached to the face. So I'm starting to do it. I've moved to another wire that I think wants it now, but it's weird. I know exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you. It's just one of those weird things. I've never actually had a single paper or a single place actually ask for it.
I mean, I guess it's just the changing times. I mean, I know I'm kind of old school because, I mean, we had those reporters' notebooks, those little flip pads, and they used to they used to give us those, first day on the job. They gave you a stack of those, and I know the reporters, at least, I'm not sure if they did it with the photographers, but the reporters, the paper kept those, and because if they ever got subpoenaed, they had to actually go back and pull those things out. And so they took it very seriously. Those were stored away somewhere, and they couldn't be tampered with. So, yeah, I mean, and then I remember in the early digital days, I was doing the voice caption thing where, you leave that on there. But even that, you could get a corrupted card. You could, there's all kinds of things. Pen and paper seem to work really well. Now, of course,
my handwriting's so terrible that the chances are better that it's not going to happen.
I mean, I don't do that kind of work now anymore. So for me, though, what happens a lot of times if I photograph, a celebrity with somebody, and I'm going to email that person the picture, so I will get their information, but I type it in my phone now. I use the Notes app and just type it in the phone, and that way they can look at it. Sometimes they type the email for me, and it's a little bit easier, so you don't spell it wrong.
Yeah, that's what I do too. Is the notepad, and then it just syncs right into your computer.
Absolutely.
And there's less transcription error. And copy paste and.
I remember reading about a guy who had set it up to where he used the note-taking capability on his camera, and when he took a picture, he could record the voice note, and then it would automatically transcribe it to the metadata on the photograph.
Interesting.
So
I don't know that I'd trust the spelling on that, but
well, you have to go back and fix it. But I mean, the majority of the information is there.
Interesting. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think I've tried almost every method I can think of to capture notes while shooting folks. Again, I've used the record button. I've used the pen and paper. I've used my cell phone. I've used the note capability on my Note 4. Handwriting notes. I can't say. I think probably, at least in terms of, it's not the most time effective, but the typing out of the note onto the phone is probably the most accurate. If you do it right, or you have them write their name, because sometimes you get somebody who has a really foreign name sometimes, or they have odd spellings of the name, like Megan. I've seen Megan spelled 16 million different times.
No, I always ask the spelling of the first name too, because you just never know.
Oh no.
It's It's David. DAPHXQ. Yeah.
The Q is silent.
The Q is silent. Right. You know what else though? I just thought about this. I remember, again in the newspaper days when we had to get names. Sometimes you'd get information that you didn't know otherwise. I remember at the end of a Florida Panthers Stanley Cup run. This was '96. They were in the Stanley Cup Finals, and John Van Beesbroek, who was the goalie, he was a big story because they weren't sure if he was coming back the next year, yada yada. And I remember at the end of the game, him skating down the ice and sort of high-fiving people through the glass. And there was, some kids, and I remember very specifically, of course I was shooting film, but I remember specifically him stopping and kind of really putting his hands up and high-fiving these kids and sort of having a nice moment, and then he kept going. Well, I knew that was probably going to be the photo, and so I went up and I got their names, and it turns out it was his kids. Right? I would not have known that. I would have published that photo, and I would have looked like an idiot, because somebody would have seen it and been like, "That's his kids." What, So, I mean, sometimes it's, that was an interesting surprise, but there's so many reasons to actually get the names.
I just, now, especially since I don't have, I don't have the capabilities that the AP does. Of being able to file immediately and file so quickly and file everything, but I'm still expected to do that. I mean, I can kind of always talk about prices about now that the voice hasn't called me back in a long time. So, but I mean, getting paid, $125 for or $150 is what I got them worked up to for 50 photos, 50 photo slideshow.
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
they're great. I love them. I loved working with them. And if they want to call me back, that'd be great. But when it came down to doing 50 captions, I was like, no,
Yeah.
I'm good.
No, I get it.
I
That
mean,
makes sense.
they expected to a certain level too, and they also expected usually after the event, whatever it was, what's done, they expected that within an hour, I'd start getting emails.
So wait a
and I
second.
know
You
a
get
lot of
paid
places are
50 photographs for how much?
$150.
So that like what? Like $3
They've
per
changed that.
photo?
They've changed that policy a bit now.
Okay.
Luckily, the new ownership. But yeah, I mean, it's
Wow.
Now it's 70 photos.
yeah. No. I mean, now they've cut it down to like 25 is the max they really want because it would just end up being. I mean, I remember covering a small demonstration in front of it was just the McMillan's trial, and there were 24 people there, and I freaking made 50 photos. They only ran 38 of them, but I made.
Oh no.
Wow.
I actually some of my best photos because I just was like, damn it, creative. I did portraits. I pulled out the 30 millimeter 1.4. Did telephotos of different angles.
Tight details. Yeah, the wide stuff.
God, nuts.
So here's something interesting that you just made me think about. So I hate to be that, I'm the old man, get off my lawn, you damn kids, but I'm going to do it for a second because back in the day when I was just starting out and we were shooting film, there was more of a, and I think people who still shoot films will tell you this. There's more of a, like a gravitas. There's something about the care you put into each image when you're shooting film. In the film days, they would have never asked for 50 photos. First of all, they couldn't do anything with 50 photos, right? But you would have had to have printed 50 images. And there was sort of this magic in the darkroom that none of the reporters, even most of the photo editors, had no idea what happened in there. Like it was this magic room with they thought there was a red light, but they had no idea what happened in there, And they would edit the photos from our negatives, and then we'd go in this room and we'd disappear for a half hour or however long it took, and we'd come out with a print, one print, or maybe two pictures, And it took a while to get that print just perfect, and we'd do our toning and all our, dodging and burning. And it would be the picture, and that was it. Here's the picture. Well, then as we started getting into digital, all of a sudden now you didn't go in this magic room. You sat out in the newsroom with everybody else. You stuck your card in the computer, and all your pictures just appeared. And everybody else is looking at that like, well, I can do that too. That's the same thing that happens with my camera, So I think it took away a little bit of the magic and the mystique. And so then, I do remember very distinctly, we used to, from a football game, which was a big deal in Miami, the Dolphins and the Hurricanes, football was everything. And in the film days, they would print, because we would usually ship our film back and they would do the printing during the game. Or if we're on the road and doing our own printing in the bowels of the stadium, we would print like 4 images or 5 images, and that was it. Like, because that's all you had time to do, and that was one's going to be on the front page, 2 are going to be on the jump, and one's in the back, and that's it. Well, then with digital, they wanted us to transmit 30, 40, 50 pictures. Now of course, they always ran the wrong one on the front page, But because you have too many pictures, it loses some of its importance, I think. So, the voice wanting 50 images, obviously, in the print version, what are they going to run? 1 or 2 pictures, but they could throw up a gallery of, web gallery of 50 images. And I think people don't. Do people look through 50 pictures on the Village Voice website? And that's not a knock on the Voice, on any website.
Yeah.
I don't even think I have 50 pictures on my own website.
Especially since they've changed it and have a better system. But I remember the early days. It was like 2.5, 3 years ago.
Right. Way back.
Way back then. But it was the one click, full page would load again because again everybody's going for clicks. Right. And I mean, like I
hate that.
Oh my God! I try to figure out how to do it on the site that I edit. It's a Alaska political blog, just for the clicks, just because obviously advertising dollars and everything like that matter. I completely just gave up, and I'm like, I'll run 10 photos if it's like a really big event, because like justifies it, and then it's all scroll down and people can see them and click them larger if they want to. Yeah. But that was always the most frustrating. I can't imagine. I mean, like I would do an entire set, and I never personally made it through my own set 25, best 25 maybe, just to make sure. I'm hoping that they pick the right ones a little bit. But yeah, no, I mean, I still remember I have the photo of my first, I walked in my college town, and to the super, super small, I don't even think it was a daily. I think it's a 2 times a week paper, even 5 or even 10 years ago it was that small. The Palladium Times, and I asked for an internship, and they're like, okay, here, go do this later today. Let's see what you do when you come back. And I came back with 75 shots, not of anything, but it was just 75 shots because I'm like, I don't know what the hell they want. They didn't give me any direction. I've never taken a journalism class in my life. I've just started as an internship working for a journalist and kind of learned and went on. But even by then, I hadn't even had that experience. And the guy goes through, and I'm like, okay, well, here's the one. He just looks at me like the photo editor there is like, oh my God, I don't even know how. Because I think he was still, this is 2004, so I probably was still shooting on film too. But knowing this paper. And goes through, picks 2, I think. He actually took 2 of my photos. Ended up running the first photo I ever took for a paper. It's on the front page of the paper. And I never got paid for it because it was just an ask for an internship. But yeah, I still remember his like, oh my God, you shot 75 photos? And I'm like, well, yeah, the event was an hour and a half. What am I supposed to do? Sit there? Go through, select 5. I mean, that's easy to do. But I'll leave an event. I shoot. Like, I'm terrible. Like, if God forbid I shoot a wedding, I shoot like 2,000 images. I just constantly, because I don't know what, I'm just bored. Otherwise.
Yeah, I'm pretty bad. I overshoot a lot.
Yeah.
By the way, Dave, can you explain film to I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Love you, Tess. Tess, have you shot with film?
I have a Argus C4 that I shoot on for fun, and a sharpshooter Polaroid.
Wow, look at that. There you go. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, for the record, I never did one of those, so, you know. I'm not that old.
No, I'm just messing with you.
No, it's magical.
I love film, but I'll never shoot with it again if I ever have.
Me either.
I say.
Me either. But one other thing though about photo editors, and this goes back to the whole sort of downsizing of the staffs, is that, you know, when I was shooting at the paper, yeah, it was a process. You would shoot film, and they never really gave us a hard time about shooting too much. I've always had a pretty heavy finger, you know. I'm a heavy shooter, but they would go through the images, and I remember, you know, I was a young kid, and you stand in the middle of the newsroom, and they go through, and we had this system where they put the negatives on this little, it was like a projector kind of, like an overhead projector kind of thing, and they could see a positive of the image on a video screen, and they would go through the images one at a time and look them that way, or with a loop on a light table, and they would very carefully go back and forth, this one, that one, maybe this one, maybe that one, the head's a little bit left, head's a little bit right, and then they would say, and they'd get to this other stuff, and they'd say, oh, this is garbage, why did you shoot that? And they would nail you. I mean, they would really criticize you, but that's where I learned. Like, that's how you know, obviously you hated it at the time, you just getting reamed in the middle of the newsroom, but that's having good photo editors and, you know, people who cared about journalism and going through your stuff and criticizing you for the bad stuff. I think today a lot of times, you know, if you're a young kid and you get an assignment, you go and you shoot it, you never even talk to a photo editor. You just get an email, you go and you shoot it, you send in some pictures, and then like something runs and you say, oh, I guess I did a good job because something got published. But what you don't know is they've been complaining about you in the newsroom because you didn't do this, you didn't do that. They needed something for the front page, so they ran it.
Yeah.
But they hated it, you know. But I don't think there's that feedback anymore because we've lost that personal one-on-one because it's all just transmitted in, and you don't have that.
Tess, you've had, I assume you have photo editors, right? You've worked with papers, okay? Some papers are one photographer, you know, operations. I've only for one assignment ever had a photo editor. How depressing. People always talk about their mentors and everything like that, and I'm like, you mean like the guy that's shooting next to me occasionally goes, dude, you know, try this differently or something.
Right. Or the Instagram account that you follow or something like that.
It's mind-blowing unless you go through that process. Like I never did, other than the 2 assignments. I got 2 assignments for the Palladium Times, and I just stopped doing it because there was no learning process. I'm like, especially if the learning process is the first photo you ever take for them is on the front cover of their paper. You're like, I'm like, okay, well then I guess I'm good enough. I mean, not ego anything, but it's just like right there.
Well,
But
and
yeah,
the cream rises to the top, and obviously, you've figured it out, and you've learned from what but yourself, when you're self-taught, it's different. I mean, we had a staff of 25 photographers in Miami and another 15 in the Broward office, and I shared a darkroom literally with Pat Farrell and Carl Juice. Pat won the Pulitzer Prize a few years ago, and Carl was an amazing photographer. And I shared a darkroom with these guys, and would print next to them every other day, and it was insane. And yeah, I was intimidated, but that's how you learn. And obviously we're always still learning, but again, I can reminisce about it all I want. Bottom line is those days are gone, and so we have to move forward. But it's just kind of a shame that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, you really have to go and seek out that feedback in that time, because photo editors are stressed and they have things to do. But the times that I've done that and actually sat down with a photo editor is when I've learned the most.
Sure.
And that that feedback I've sought from my peers now.
I would say to young photographers, I would say do portfolio reviews whenever you can. I mean, a lot of these, photo conventions and things, you have to pay for them a lot of times, but it's like find somebody that you respect and somebody whose work you respect. And of course, there's a bell curve there, so you have to throw out the best one and throw out the worst one, and then find somewhere in the middle. But you have to find those people, and I mean, people send me pictures sometimes, friends of mine, interns and assistants, and I'm always happy to look at pictures and give critiques, and I'm sure we all are. So
I'm always terrified when people send me stuff and ask me questions, and I'm like, are you kidding me? But okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Send it to me. I'll cut down your kind of thing. I like my opinion being heard, obviously.
I've never grown unless I've been broken down, so I can be built back up again. Because I mean, you shoot and you're in your own little bubble and you think you're doing good, and then you show your stuff to somebody and you're like, this is all garbage.
Yeah.
And you have to be told that. Because you'll never grow otherwise.
Or one of the best things I learned is exactly that. It doesn't matter how hard you work to get the photo, right? Like, because we get attached to it because it's like, oh, I had to climb on top of that building and I had to blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but at the end of the day, if the photo's crap, it's crap. It doesn't matter how hard you worked for it. And the other thing is, and I've used this in portfolio critiques, is if it wasn't the person who it is in the photo, would it still be an image? Like I've had somebody show me a picture of a president standing at a podium, and it's like, if it's not the president, it's not a picture. So you like it because it's the president, okay, but it doesn't tell me anything. There's no story there.
Tess, you were gonna say something before both of us jumped in.
Interrupted you, yeah.
What was I going to say?
Oh, sorry. Put you on the...
We talked too much. That's what you were gonna say. Shut up, you guys.
Tess, so a dark room is.
Oh, come on!
I think we've done enough condescending old people.
We're all old.
No, I love hearing stories of film days.
No,
All right, Tess. If it comes back to you, please, by all means, interrupt us and let us know what your thoughts were.
I will.
But we're gonna go on and talk about our picks of the week. So I always like to give our guests first dib on the picks of the week. So what do you have for us, guests? Guest panelists. Tess, let's start with you.
Go ahead, Tess.
Yeah, so an educational resource that has been really helpful to me as a young photographer is the Image Deconstructed. And they pick an image and interview the photographer and give the background and everything that's going on around them outside of the image, and you even get to see their whole takes, and that has been really helpful to me because we all get in this little bubble when we're shooting, and it's really helpful to see other people's approaches and get new insight. And so I would encourage people to look at that.
How do people find that, Tess?
imagedeconstructed.com.
Okay. Great, thank you. David?
Yeah, no, my thing is there was a big thing this week. I think it's a big deal. The Nick software collection. I've used for many, many years, NIK, Nick. They have a collection, I think it's 7 apps or something like that, Color Effects Pro, Analog Effects Pro. The one I use all the time is Silver Effects Pro. I've always said their black and white conversions are incredible. They look as much like film as you could possibly get. Google bought it a couple of years ago, and it was like $500 when it first came out. Google bought it. They made it $149. This week they decided to make it free. Of course, the haters on the internet are pointing out that's probably because I think they're stopping development on it, and they're probably going to roll it into something
Google
else.
Claims they're not. Google claims they're not. Not that that
Okay.
means anything, but
Okay.
they've actually already said, because I read an article and I'm like, okay, I personally don't care. It's free. It's not something.
Well,
I know I
the
bought
thing.
it years ago, but
That's
lost
the
it.
thing.
But,
Yeah, I mean, they have my money. It's fine. But that's the thing. Don't complain about any part of it. It's free. Like, if it's only good for another couple of years, use it for a couple of years.
Find something to complain about.
I know. But anyway, I thought that was huge. Like I said, Silver Effects Pro, I'm a big fan. I have no contractual connection to Nick or anything like that. But my Bon Jovi book, all my black and whites, I did all the conversions. A really kind of nice sepia tone that I developed my own preset, and then I just applied it to everything, did a couple of tweaks here and there, and I think it looks really cool. So it's free. So download it while you still can.
So when did you buy it, Dave?
I mean, 5 years ago. I don't know. It was a while ago. When it was $500.
Oh,
you know.
Wow.
Yeah. But I've gotten my money's worth. I mean, I've used it for years and years, and even Color Effects Pro I don't use as much, but they've even got an HDR effects. I don't do much HDR, but I think it's 7 different apps, and they're standalone apps. They're Photoshop plugins. They're Lightroom plugins, Aperture plugins. I love it. So even if it's only good for another year or two, get it while you can. It's free.
And I guess mine, it's Vantage on Medium. They have a fantastic blog, but about photography and photojournalists and in general. But there's an article, Meet the Freediving Couple Who Make Stunning Underwater Photographs with No Scuba Gear, even though the photograph shows them with a bunch of scuba gear. It's a weird title. I mean, at least I would consider a wetsuit and goggles and a breather, like scuba gear, but okay. And fins.
By definition, that's
yeah,
good.
I mean, everything through there, but okay. Either way, the photographs are ridiculous. Like amazing shots of underwater, like using it as a model. The top shot, if you look at the link, top shot it's in black and white, and it looks like a desert scene, and then you have this the shark that's swimming right behind the guy. It's completely insane. It's underwater photography, something I've always really wanted to do, but I've never bothered to get the training that one needs to go through to do it. So anytime I get to see it, it's one of the last areas of photography that I really, really just openly appreciate, because it's something that I just can't even touch doing. But yeah, so that's mine.
What about space photography?
Okay, as well. Literally being in space in a shuttle, I have not done yet, because I think at this age, unfortunately, I think I'm past my prime becoming an astronaut. So.
Hey, John Glenn went back up, right? He was.
Even though, as a Nikon user, I would know how to use the gear that NASA gives us.
Wow.
So.
You could say it's a new frontier. Okay, my pick is, I'm not a Nikon user personally, but I do use Nikon for work. And I love what they're doing with low light capability. Of course, they announced the D5 would have the 3-point-something million ISO. So, I mean, I look at what we have right now in terms of night vision capability, and it's just, it's not really great. So I think more and more we're seeing these mainstream camera manufacturers just pushing the limits of ISO. So my link is from a Petapixel article, basically showcasing what the imagery looks like from different ISOs. Because again, as the cameras aren't really out yet, you can't really get those raw images, because whenever you look at pre-release camera gear, they'll never let you put your own memory card in it and allow you to take pictures with it. But this is some really good imagery from the camera, showcasing all the different ISOs, all the way up to the 3 million one. So although it's not really usable in any sort of like, mainstream what you would need, but from I think a surveillance slash maybe intelligence gathering perspective, it's really interesting. Just it's amazing to see what cameras can do. So low light ISO capabilities showcased in the link that I will include in the show notes. That's my pick of the week. So panelists, please let people know how they can reach out to you and find more information about you.
Tess, go for it.
My website is tessfreemanphoto.com. All my contact information is in the About Me section, so yeah.
That's easy. I'm davidbergman.net. Yes, I'm .net, and I've had it for a million years. There's a realtor named David Bergman who got the .com right before I did. But
Did you offer to buy his name from him?
We've talked. He actually saw me on some interviewed on there was like a 2020 thing or something years ago, and he wrote me. He's like, "Oh, you're the photographer." Sometimes he gets emails that are intended for me, and so now he forwards them to me, which is very cool. So yeah, he's a good guy. But yeah, all my social media, most of it is just at David Bergman and all that stuff. And I also have a weekly web video show that I started doing a couple months ago for Adorama TV. It's called 2 Minute Tips with David Bergman. It's kind of a fun little 2-minute, and basically what I'm trying to do is I'm not teaching photography. I mean, you can learn apertures and shutter speeds everywhere. So these are the little tips, like how to properly tighten a C-stand so that it doesn't come loose, and shooting from low angles to make somebody look bigger, and just those little how to use best uses for gaffer's tape, and things like that. So it's just the little practical tips that hopefully will actually help your photography. So I started doing that a couple months ago, and there's a new one every week. Adorama releases one every Monday at 11 a.m. and I got to keep those up. I need at least about a year's worth of tips. So I'll see. So send them in if you got good tips. But so far so good. I'm a couple months in and still going strong. So that's been fun.
I saw your one on rechargeable batteries.
There you go. Yeah.
Really good.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good information.
That's the kind of stuff I'm trying to do. Why do you how to deal with multiple flashes when you've got all those batteries to handle.
By the way, Tess, do you enjoy using the Medium web design thing for your website?
You mean format?
Format, yes, sorry.
Yeah, I do. I'm not that much of a programmer, so it's really easy to use design-wise and move around images, and I think it looks really nice, and I've toyed with a couple different themes and still haven't settled on one that I love, but it's nice that they have a lot of options.
I know we're almost done here, but I have a quick question actually for everybody. I wonder, and I struggle with this, how clients and promotion and all this kind of stuff. I mean, we've got so many outlets now, and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and I mean, our websites used to be everything, right? I mean, that was it. That was your brochure. That was your calling card. That was your business card. I wonder now. I mean, I honestly haven't updated my site in quite a while. I mean, it's I make little tweaks here and there, but I haven't done a major overhaul in probably a year. But I always feel like, well, I'm posting on Facebook every day, every couple of days. I have this web show now. I have all this other stuff on Instagram, and I feel like my promotion and all that stuff is moving, but then I go to my website and I go, oh, but I haven't updated that in a while, and I feel guilty about that. So it's like, is the website still number one priority, or is it just part of it? Is it less important than it used to be? Maybe this is a topic for another week, but
I think it's still top priority. But like when I go check out other photographers, I check out their websites first because I think that's the work that they value, and then that things that captures their style.
Good point.
For me, it's for it's not even for getting my word out about me. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. For me, it's almost completely. It's two things. It's basically my absolute backup archive of everything highly quality edited. I do what everybody probably shouldn't do web-wise, which if I upload the wide set of everything up to the net. So like I went to CPAC and I think I uploaded 150 to 200 photos in my set. So, but it's for me literally because I know that no one's going to go 6 clicks into my site and look through 800, look through the many photos. But the big thing is that the front page, if you just go to zdroberts.com, It has 20 photos that do a slideshow through, and those are my top photos at any given time, which I update kind of any time I do an event. Like I don't think I've updated them since like 2 weeks ago or something. Especially during the campaign season, I think I've updated more often than I've ever done it before.
I just feel like I think I used to get unsolicited work through my website. I don't really get it anymore. I mean, my stuff is either targeted, where I'm going after a client and I'm sending them to my site or to something specific, or it's just the sort of word of mouth in the industry that I'm in, and again, we're already Facebook friends, and they have a thing come up, and I don't know. I mean, it used to be people went to websites and actually sent you an email. I'm not seeing that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm rebuilding my website right now, and I'm only doing it really because I think you need to have a website, you need to have a web presence, but if you don't have the social presence with the Instagram and the just Facebook and everything else that goes along with that, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You have to have both. Yeah. Because when I'm looking for panelists for the show, say for instance, I'm going to go to your website and I want to see that you have a body of work that I can at least look at. You got to have that central, like, organized location that you curate your best stuff. But then again, have like the stuff where you do your cool projects on Instagram, or you have to be exploring that, because that's going to lead you back to the website ultimately, because that's where you want people to go to as your central hub. And that's what I've heard from other photographers who've done, who are very much more advanced in social media than perhaps I am, is they'll use Instagram to get people's attention, but they're always leading people back to the site because that's what they want people to go to. That's their main connection.
I view it as kind of the check mark that certifies that you're a professional to some level. No, I mean, it's just that if you've spent the money on a website to some level, like it looks like you're put together. I mean, I know a bunch of professionals that I go to their site and I'm like, holy crap, you haven't updated this since 2002 or something like that. I'm like, okay, I guess you're that. To me, of course, then if you have an old website that you haven't updated, that also speaks to a higher level, because you get so much work that you don't have to care about it.
Right? I mean, some of the sort of legendary photographers
I know.
Don't have sites, they were developed in 1997.
God, I forget who we talked to. We talked to somebody, I forget which panelist, Dave, it was like a week or two ago. He's like a ridiculous photographer. I don't even know how we got him on the show. And I go to his site, and it hasn't been updated in years, clearly.
Yeah, he's working.
I look at his photos, and I'm like, oh my God, they were all these photos on this site were shot on film. And I would hire him tomorrow because, oh my God, I recognize every single one of those images as something I know. Like,
sure. But if your site proves that you're a professional, you should have just launched the browser when you were at court for the judge. And
well, I didn't have a big site back then. I was more of an emerging photographer 5 years ago, I guess.
Nice. Yeah, I would say for you, David, or any photographer who wants to make sure their site is like up to date, look at it on your phone. If it shows up well on your phone, you're good.
Yeah, no, my site's I'm fine there. I mean, I use a photo shelter template, and I love those guys, and I have my archive built into there privately, so I have access to those images. And it's a good public front, and I'm happy with the site. I just I used to blog all the time, once a week, twice a week. I would do pretty extensive blog posts, and I'm glad it's up there because it's nice to look back 10 years and see some of those old posts. But honestly, the social media's kind of replaced blogging for me. I don't write those long blog posts anymore, and now it's just a quick hit on social media. Hey, this is what I'm doing, and I want clients to see that I'm working. I want them to see some of the other work that I do, but I don't spend the amount of time writing those long, intensive blog posts that I used to. But now I produce a video show, so I guess it's kind of the same thing.
Well, we definitely need to explore that topic more so. Well, maybe we'll have you back on, David. If
there you go. I'd love to.
For another show, we can talk all about websites, and we did actually tackle that topic a few episodes back, where we talked about like what was the best sort of photography website medium. Because like I use WordPress for me. I know people use Photo Shelter, Medium format, whatever. But again. We'll have to have you back on. We can talk about that more in detail.
I'd love to.
Zach, how can people find you?
ZDRoberts.com, ZDRoberts on Twitter, ZDRoberts on Facebook.
And you can find me at djmphoto.com, but I prefer everybody go to aroundthelens.com. You can also find Zach there, too. So you can find me or Zach, or all our panelists, actually, on that website. And we're going to end the show right now. But as I mentioned before, if you want to listen to our bonus topic, go to patreon.com, throw us, some schmeckles, and you get to see that. And if not, we'll eventually put it online. But, for right now, if you want to see it right now, go on there and go check that out. But again, I want to thank our panelists for taking time to be a part of the show. I truly appreciate it. And for Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy, and this has been Around the Lens, and we're out.